Divisional matchup is the New Orleans Saints against the Carolina Panthers. This team already matched up in week 1 of the season, and my matchup that matters is sort of the New Orleans Saints maybe against themselves for this one, right? Because when you look at how this matchup happened in week 1, it was not even close. The Saints had an 83.6 passing grade against the Panthers. They had a 76.0 rushing grade. And basically everything the New Orleans Saints wanted to do on offense, they were doing. When you look at the statistics, it's not like Derek Carr was blowing the doors off in the passing game, or Alvin Kamara had a million rushing yards. They were just extremely efficient in what they were doing, and Clint Kubiak was really rolling against this Panthers defense. Panthers defense, they were the worst in the NFL in week 1. We just didn't really know that yet. And unfortunately, we have to view them the same as one of the worst, if not the worst defense in the NFL here in this matchup. Derek Carr is kind of coming back. They don't have Rashid Shaheed in this one. There's some other injuries that they're going through, but like Talize Fuanga, for example, is back in the lineup here. And so, can the Saints still have that sort of success on the road now with the Panthers? Now, Andy Dalton was a full participant in the early portions of practice this week. Jonathan Brooks was as well. So perhaps we get those guys into the lineup and maybe it changes things. Because remember, Bryce Young was the starting quarterback when these two teams faced off in week 1. So that could change things a bit here. But I still believe it's the New Orleans Saints versus themselves. It's the Rocky quote in Creed where he's just like, oh yeah, take a look in the mirror. That's the toughest opponent that you're going to have to face. And that's basically the Saints, how they're going to go into this game. They're basically looking in the mirror and it's like, okay, if we don't beat ourselves, right, we should take care of business against the Panthers here, whether it is Bryce Young or Andy Dalton who is starting. Now, I'm not going to say it's going to look as easy as it did in week 1, but this is still New Orleans' game to lose, in my opinion. And so for me, it is simply the Saints have enough back from the team that we saw in week 1 that has missed a good chunk of this year in between, that they should be able to get the victory here. But what about you? What do you think the matchup that matters is?
Yeah, I tried to isolate kind of one bright spot and one strength of the Carolina Panthers, defensively at least, and that's J.C. Horn. They're trading away, they're kind of fire sailing certain things, and you know that between that and the injuries that they've sustained, there's not a whole lot of bright spots, unfortunately, on this Carolina Panthers team. But J.C. Horn is one of them, and so what is he going to do against Chris Olave? So if you're talking about a matchup that's going to give Carolina a chance, you're going to need to limit Chris Olave, especially, having Derek Carr back and seeing how much of a boost that's going to be for the Saints offense. But Olave this season, even with kind of the shuffling around, he's still tied for 7th in PFF grade at an 82. Now, he only has 387 yards, which ranks 30th among receivers. 21 catches gaining first down, that's tied for 20th among receivers, which are still good numbers, but obviously have been affected by the fact that his starting quarterback did go down for quite some time. But J.C. Horn, he's allowed 3 touchdowns. He has 1 interception on the year, 8 forced incompletions. He can certainly get to the ball, but can he actually make the play? Can he get more, take the ball away, make sure that he's limiting the Saints' production? That's going to be a really interesting matchup to me.
Yeah, I think that's a big time matchup. There's no doubt. Like, I have Chris Olave on here, and if Chris Olave doesn't play well, I don't know. I don't know if this team continues to play well, certainly with Rashid Shaheed not there. But man, you look at it last game, I think Chris Olave had over 100 yards, right, against the Los Angeles Chargers, and Alvin Kamara had a 6.7 yards per carry average. And that, to me, is a lot of things were working for the Saints, and they scored 8 points in that game. I thought their third down conversion percentage really since week 2. And I think that's the plus factor here in this one is Derek Carr's return, but also the plus factor is simply like Clint Kubiak. We were praising Clint Kubiak after those first 2 weeks, and we were like, man, this guy's the next, he's the next great thing in the NFL. He's going to be a head coach someday. And they have lost 6 games in a row now, and they're third down percentage and red zone scoring percentage have really gone down, certainly since Derek Carr has gotten hurt. I know that that's certainly context that you have to think about here, but to me, the plus factor is Clint Kubiak in the red zone. Can we finish these drives with touchdowns? That's a big thing that you need to look out for, not just to get off the shine and get a win here for the Saints, but also moving forward. Like, can you have faith? All due respect, a lot of teams have beaten the Carolina Panthers so far this year. Can you do something this week that makes me feel as though a win against the Carolina Panthers would actually give me some faith that now that Derek Carr is back, you're moving up and moving forward. So that's a plus factor in this one. Obviously, is in my opinion, if Jonathan Brooks plays, I think Jonathan Brooks could be a big time plus factor as well, because now no Deontay Johnson, you're going to rely on the ground game more than you ever have. The offensive line for Carolina has not been nearly as bad as people thought it was going to be going into the season.
It's actually pretty decent.
We have seen Chuba Hubbard play very well at certain stretches throughout the season. I think throwing a guy who I had as RB1 in last year's running back class before he got hurt, Jonathan Brooks, getting a little two-headed monster here and really being a team that fortifies its identity on the ground, I think that could be huge for Carolina as well. So a couple of different plus factors that I think could be for both sides here, but that's what I got in this game. What's your plus factor here?
I really do hope that, I think a lot about the fact that Carolina now has the run game and offensive line coaches from the Bucs, when the Bucs didn't really have that successful of a run game. And whether that was a symptom of the fact that Bruce Arians just wanted to pass the ball down the field all the time, but even in the last couple of years, it still wasn't up to the creativity, the diversity, the stuff that we would like to see out of a team that wants to run the ball first, or wants to run the ball quite at all. So that's something that I think is an uphill battle for the Carolina Panthers. But you're right. It's something that's absolutely going to be needed, because you don't really have another choice now on this offense if you want to get some offense at all, some offensive production. But my plus factor for this is Derek Carr, because things have changed, for the Saints since the last time that he played, namely along that offensive line. They've suffered multiple injuries along that offensive line. It's not clicking it the way it was when Derek Carr went down. That's something he's going to have to overcome. You mentioned not having Rashid Shaheed as well. So how can he operate this offense with with a lot more limitations than he had prior to going down? And if he can still kind of make it work, if him and Clint Kubiak can combine forces, and I think the Saints do still have enough, to be a really successful and productive offense. When you talk about the fact they do have Chris Olave, and then you've got Alvin Kamara that balances so much out, acts as one of those check down receivers on top of being able to run the football very, very well. That's plenty for this New Orleans Saints offense to get going, especially against a Carolina Panthers defense that is just not what we had hoped it would be, prior to the year starting.
Mohal in the chat, before we move on to the next game, saying Canales already announced that Bryce Young will start. He wants Andy Dalton 100%, so it looks like it is going to be Bryce Young in this game.
So the Saints get Bryce Young again.
I get Bryce Young again, and I don't know if that's good for Carolina. I understand wanting Andy Dalton to be 100% and making sure that he's 100%.
This is another reason that the run game is going to be so incredibly crucial.
Yes, 100%.